And one of the most important things to remember is that hunting is typically regulated, but the laws can vary from one country to the next. And it can even vary depending on the type of game that is being hunted. So you have to keep that in mind when you're building your websites. Who exactly are you trying to attract to your website? And what are the laws and regulations that they are bound by? Because you simply don't want to be recommending things to them that might contradict those laws and regulations. And also you don't want to try to be putting forth a lot of work and effort to sell products to them that perhaps they may never be able to use, at least not in the country that you're trying to target. So in the USA, which would likely be the common country that a lot of Amazon affiliates will be targeting here, state law actually regulates hunting, with the exception of some federal laws that do things like exempting Native Americans, Native Alaskans from some of these regulations, and then you have some other laws that protect things like migratory birds and endangered species. But beyond these federal laws, everything else is regulated on a state-by-state basis. So you should always consider that when you're trying to build your website. Figure out if you're targeting a particular type of game. Figure out where that game can be hunted, what the laws and regulations are in those areas. Now, these regulations can obviously limit the overall business for the niche because they will limit the number of hunting licenses they provide to people that are interested in hunting for a particular type of game based on whatever their surveys have come up with that says how many of that type of animal can be hunted that year. Beyond this, though, even though it can limit the overall business of the niche in a way, it can actually be pretty useful for affiliates because it gives you a unique perspective to use to target the niche. Both beginners and even your more experienced hunters that might be looking to try out a new type of game, they will all be seeking information related to the laws and regulations for hunting in their area, and they're especially going to be doing this before they actually get to the point where they're going to be buying products for that type of hunting. So I see this as a great opportunity to try to offer some of that relevant information for whatever you're trying to target. Look up what some of the laws are. Find out what states actually hunt that game, and specifically try to go after those people and those particular purposes to bring them into your site. Next up, within this particular package, you have the 4 main sub-niches that have been selected. You can honestly find a bunch of different ways that you can target any one of these 4 sub-niches. So you don't have to just go after hunting optics or hunting decoys. You can narrow down your focus even more, and this will help you to attract traffic to your site a lot easier. It will help you to reduce the amount of work that you have to do because you won't have to cover information on everything. And it can also help you when it comes to simply referring sales and keeping people interested in your website, because they won't have to hunt through a bunch of stuff to try to find the information they really want. So what I recommend to do is consider the main niches: hunting optics, decoys, cameras, and calls, but think about them narrowed down to a specific aspect, like a particular hunting method, a particular hunter skill level, a certain game category or a specific type of game, the time of year, perhaps even the location, since you have state laws regulating a lot of this type of stuff. You also have hunting purposes. Some people hunt for sport, for trophies. Some people hunt for food. Some people hunt for cultural, traditional type of reasons. You can actually take multiple purposes from this little list that I just went over with you and combine it with one of these niches to come up with a highly focused sub-niche that you can target with an entire website. Just as one wild example, small game calls for beginner hunters. I have taken a particular niche, the hunting calls. I have combined it with a particular game category, small game, and I have also combined it with a particular hunter skill level, beginner hunters. And again, I could potentially come up with hundreds of different combinations here just for the call niche by mixing and matching different aspects and purposes for these niches here. Now, when it comes to game that is hunted, it can vary obviously from one country to the next because you're going to have different kinds of animals living there. So I highly, highly recommend that you do some research into the area that you're trying to target and specifically into the type of game that you're trying to target as well, if that's what you're going after. Because the information can be completely different concerning one type of game than it is a completely different one. So in the USA, at least, these are the main types of game and also the game categories that are hunted and regulated. So these particular phrases here, big game, small game, fur bearers, predators, etc., you will have people searching for information on these topics on the internet. They might be looking for, laws and regulations type of information. They might be looking for specific types of hunting equipment related to some of these topics. So I at least wanted to do some of the research for you and provide you with an actual list that you can use of the different categories and also some of the main types of game that are included within these categories. You can target a particular game category, or you could even try to go after a specific type of game instead. It all just kind of depends on what niche you're choosing and what products you decide you're going to be promoting in that niche. The next thing I want to talk about here is hunting methods. There are actually a lot of different ways that people go about hunting, and there's different terminology that is associated with some of these different methods. Now, not all of these methods are essentially accepted hunting methods. There are some here that are highly criticized by the general hunting community, especially within the United States. And I'll get to talking about that here a little bit later before the end of today's class. So what you can do is, again, use this information as a way that you can go about targeting some of these niches with a little bit more precision. Within any given niche, you might have a number of different methods that are used by different kinds of hunters. So instead of simply trying to give them general information on everything, you could go for one very specific type of hunting method. Baiting, for example, uses decoys, lures, scents, or food to attract the animal. Blind hunting or stand hunting is hunting from a hidden or an elevated position. You can kind of picture too, as I'm going through these hunting methods, that each hunting method is going to require its own equipment that may be completely different from equipment used with other hunting methods. So this not only gives you a way that you can narrow down your focus, but it can also actually help you with picking out the best things to promote to people. With stand hunting, for example, you obviously have not only your normal hunting type of gear, but you would also have things like tree stands that get included in cases like that. Calling, using animal noises to attract or drive game. You have a lot of calls that have been reviewed as part of this particular package. But again, calling is not necessarily something that is just done on its own. People combine the calling method with one or maybe even multiple other methods to bring the entire hunt together. Obviously, it's not going to do you any good to just attract in the animals if you have no other equipment, no way to actually in the hunt. So you might have people that are using baiting and calling and stand hunting and camouflage all together, perhaps. With camouflage, you obviously have not only visual concealment, but you also have odor concealment, pretty big in the hunting industry. They have all kinds of odor-related products to either help you conceal your own smell or perhaps to make you smell like something else, like perhaps the prey of what you're trying to hunt, or to make you smell like the prey itself. You also have dogs that are used, and again, you would have different types of equipment associated with this type of hunting. Dogs are often used to flush, herd, drive, track, point out, pursue, or retrieve prey. You also have driving, which is herding of animals in a direction, often toward another hunter. Flushing is scaring animals from concealed areas. They'll make a lot of loud noises. Dogs actually are used in combination with flushing and maybe even calling or baiting as well for things like duck hunting, for example. Now there's another page here of even more hunting methods to talk about. Glassing is using optics, like binoculars, for example, to find animals. You have one of the 4 sub-niches in this particular package covers glassing. You also have internet hunting. This is pretty new, but is actually really, really highly criticized, especially in the USA. And I will be talking about this in a little bit more detail later on before the end of the class. But basically, with internet hunting, you actually have webcams and remotely controlled guns, and believe it or not, people are sitting at their computers hunting real animals, which I think is pretty ridiculous. Next up, you have netting, where people use nets. It could just simply be throwing nets or setting up nets to trap animals. It could also be active netting using things like cannon or rocket nets to trap the animal that you're going after. You also have spotlighting, using artificial light to either find or blind the animals. This is often done at night and is actually, while it sounds pretty simple, it's typically also a criticized hunting method. Stalking or still hunting is simply walking quietly in search of animals, being stealthy to pursue them. You also have tracking, where you're using physical evidence to try to pursue animals. A lot of information is centered around tracking and will be very relevant to not necessarily every hunting sub-niche, but a lot of them tracking is relevant. And so you can do things like include books or potentially even digital training products that could be promoted for subjects like tracking, for example, to help train people how to actually do that. You also have trapping, using devices like snares, pits, and deadfalls to capture. Now, what I was talking about before, how you have certain hunting methods that are actually criticized by the hunting community in general. This again can vary from country to country, from state to state, depending on the type of game being hunted perhaps. So again, it is very, very important to understand exactly who you're going to be targeting with your niche to make sure that you are addressing the laws and regulations and maybe even simply the preferences of the majority of hunters in that particular niche. One of these things in particular that I wanted to talk to you about involves the USA. It's part of American hunting tradition, something called fair chase, where basically this is meant to be a balance between the hunter and the hunted, to the point where the hunter is not supposed to successfully end a hunt every single time out. In fact, they're only supposed to occasionally succeed, and in fact the hunted is supposed to get away the majority of the time under fair chase. So since a lot of affiliates are going to be targeting USA hunting niches, I thought it was really important that you actually understand this concept of fair chase, because if you're trying to promote some of the more new age products that do not fall in line with this particular tradition, then you may simply be harming yourself before you really even get started, in terms of you might be trying to push sales on products that ultimately the people that could use that product, they aren't really interested in it, and this could be the big reason why. So the actual rules of what defines a fair chase can really, again, vary not just from perhaps one country to the next, but even within the USA, it can vary from one organization to the next. But here are at least some general hunting practices and methods that are considered to violate this fair chase principle. So you would not want to be promoting something or providing information for hunting in any of these areas. I believe that these are going to be the most important things to avoid in the hunting niche. First of all, naturally trapped animals. They're trapped in snow, water, ice, pinned down by a tree, a rock, whatever the case may be, it's not considered a fair chase when the animal has no chance of escape. You also have hunting from or herding with power vehicles. Obviously, using something like an ATV with a group of people and they're all herding animals together or chasing them down to simply shoot them directly from the power vehicle, it's pretty easy to overpower the animal that way because obviously the power vehicle is going to be faster than them. So this is also considered to violate the fair chase principle. Another hunting method that I was talking about briefly earlier, night spotlighting, where you're taking extremely bright floodlights, for example, and shining them up into the woods, and you're looking for that reflection of the animal's eyes off of the light. And people actually use that to locate the animals and then just simply shoot them where they are while they have them spotlighted. Because number one, they're kind of temporarily blinded by the light. And number two, they're also not scared off by it. They don't instinctively interpret the light as danger or prey or anything. So they essentially just freeze in place. And this, again, doesn't make for a very fair chase. Also, hunting with tranquilizers, poisons, or hunting in escape-proof enclosures is also not considered fair chase. Dealing with more new age technology, it is also really not accepted to use a lot of this new technology with hunting because it simply gives the hunter an unfair advantage over the hunted. Using electronic devices for attracting, locating, or pursuing game, it could even be electronic devices perhaps like attached to a bow and arrow that might be targeting guidance, for example, is also not considered acceptable under the fair chase principle. So again, I thought this information was really, really important for you guys to have because if you're going after any of this stuff, you can not only receive potentially some backlash if you're involved in social networking and one of these niches that relates to one of these practices, but you could simply also find yourself only going after a minority of hunters who are basically doing things outside of the law and under the radar. While there are plenty of those people, your best success will simply be to stick to the way things have traditionally been done and the way that they are accepted. Now, I wanted to give you guys some really useful information that can help to guide you to some of the best niches that you can go after. And I'm especially referring to ways that you can narrow down the 4 main niches from this particular package into something highly focused, but something that will still leave you with a lot of potential customers out there. One of the easiest ways that you can do that is by using real statistical information. Now, with the hunting niche, while it could be considered a drawback or a negative thing for this industry to be so highly regulated in the USA, for example, on another hand, this tight regulation is actually really, really beneficial for affiliates because the government has information out there available for you that you can actually use and obtain completely free. And this information is going to help you to not only figure out the best niches that you can go after within the hunting niche, but it can also help you to figure out specific demographics that you can use to target the people that are most likely going to be interested in what you're doing. This is especially relevant if you end up doing things like using Facebook advertising, perhaps to build a fan page for you. You obviously want people to be liking on your fan page that are most likely going to be potential customers for the products that you're promoting. Well, one of the easiest ways that you can do that and spend the least amount of money possible while getting the most effective loyal readers is simply to use information that really can't be disputed. Now, one of the main things that I wanted to review here with you are the most popular animals hunted in the USA, and this is based on a number of hunters. So these are actual U.S. citizens that hunt specific types of prey within this country, and this is based on 2011 statistical information, which is actually the most recent information that they currently make available on this. So with that said, deer is the #1 hunted game in the USA, and in fact, it's perhaps 3 times more popular than anything else out there. Now, you also have to consider this is only going to be legal hunting. There are still going to be plenty of people who will go out there and hunt things illegally, who simply don't obtain a license to actually go out and hunt something. However, these numbers should still be pretty accurate in terms of the overall popularity of these different types of game, simply because if you're going to have people illegally hunting one type of game, you're likely going to have people illegally hunting all the other types of game as well, so all the numbers could technically be increased. Certain types of game, like squirrel, might be more common to be illegally hunted than things like deer, because obviously the game is a lot smaller and the firepower required is going to be a lot less. A lot of people will simply hunt squirrel in the woods out back of their house with perhaps a gun that they bought at a local Walmart, maybe even a pellet gun or something, while obviously that's simply not going to be possible for hunting deer. So with that said, there are nearly 11 million deer hunters. These are licensed deer hunters in the U.S. just for that particular year. So this is a lot of potential customers. And even when you get into some of the less popular types of game, you're still at 500,000 or more hunters that are interested in any one of these. Wild turkey has over 3 million. Squirrel has over 1.5 million, as does rabbit. Pheasant, duck, dove, all over 1 million hunters as well. Elk, quail, prairie chicken, goose, bear, these are all under 1 million, but still above 500,000 hunters. So I would consider any one of these to potentially be a good possible niche that you can target. However, Up here at the top, anything over 1 million, these are obviously going to be the most popular and may give you the best chances of success. Now, even though I've presented this information to you right here, there's honestly tons more information that the U.S. government makes available for hunting, and this also applies to fishing as well. So I've included this address for you, http www.census.gov/prod/www/fishing.html. In case you would like to go ahead and take a look at this page, I will add the link in here for you guys into the text box. This particular page, if you look over on the far right-hand column of the table that is there, that is the column for the 2011 statistics, and they even provide in some of the other columns previous years, but obviously I would use the most recently available data. Now, there's not only data there for the entire country as a whole, but there's also individual reports there for each of the different states throughout the country. So you can use this resource to find out exactly what people are hunting and where they are hunting them. Not only that, but it'll also give you demographic information. It'll tell you what their education level is, what their income level is, what their age groups are, whether they're male or female. You know, it breaks it down into a lot of really great demographical, statistical type of information for you to use. So pretty much no matter what you're doing in hunting or even in potentially a fishing related niche, you can find that information right on this web page right here. So I highly recommend to take some time and to try to browse through some of those reports and find some information that directly relates to whatever it is that you're trying to target in this particular niche.